Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Adam Thompson Show. Cutting edge.
He just told you to shut the up.
No holds barred.
Thanks for not calling me a liar, son of a...
The latest trending topics, legal cases, and social issues. In-your-face commentary on all subjects. Adam Thompson.
You can't handle the truth.
Adam Thompson brings his 25-year experience as a high-profile criminal and civil trial lawyer and gritty New York street smarts and attitude to the studio. Real unbiased talk.
Those who want respect, give respect.
You never know what he'll say next. This is the Adam Thompson Show. Here's your host, Adam Thompson.
Hey, good evening out there, everybody. As always, it's Thursday, 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Adam Thompson Show here on Blog Talk Radio. First, want to shout out to everybody. The emails and the tweets have been great. Keep them coming. Good comments, good questions. Again, find us at www.attorneyadamthompson.com. There you'll find the links to my website for my law firm, as well as our Twitter page, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel with tons of different videos on different topics posted. Post your comments, your questions that you've been doing. It's been tremendous. We have a great show tonight. We're going to have Judge Sidlin on later, who was the judge in the Anna Nicole Smith trial, if you remember way back when. He presided over what was going to happen to her body after her demise, and there's a lot of theatrics and fireworks in that case. We're going to get to that later. As always, I first want to start off with talking about what's current in the news, what's going on, and I always like to start it off with a rant. And you know, I'm concerned. Each week I've been talking about what's going on in Syria and our responsibility to the rest of the world as a United States, and our responsibility to ourselves. You know, we have obligations to our own country first. And I've been saying it all along, week to week, America first. You know, I have no problem with America trying to right wrongs that are going on around the world. And sometimes you have to step in, and you have to change things. You know, just like we did back in the 30s and 40s when the Nazis were on the rise and spreading around the world and trying to take over the world. There's just times you have to step in and you have to make change. However, you know, it's a different world today. And while we don't ever want to see atrocities repeat itself or see systematic Holocaust wiping out groups of people, we can never let that happen. But at the same time, do we get involved in all these minor skirmishes that are going on around the world? I mean, for one thing, we get involved in some of them and don't get involved in others. So doesn't it look a little bizarre if we're really about freedom and justice and we're about righting wrongs, that we get involved only in some of the issues or some of the problems that take place in parts of the world but not others? Does that really reflect well on the overall American packaging, the American image, the American marketing tool, saying that we right wrongs, we're the exceptional country, if we're not stepping in and righting the wrongs everywhere? Does it look a little ambiguous if we're just righting wrongs where there's economic interest for us, where we can make deals and trade, or where there's oil interests so we can help with our fuel, or just, you know, strategic locations based on national security where we could set up military bases? I mean, these are the questions you got to ask yourself. Is it right that we're getting involved in only some of these things? Because these are the questions that's being thrown around out there for us again getting into Syria. Do we need to be there? Last week we had Michael Scherer on, one of the leading experts in this area in foreign affairs, and you remember, he said he doesn't think we need to be there. While I didn't agree with Michael on everything, particularly his position on Israel, I'm very pro-Israel. I think we should do everything to always protect Israel as one of our main allies, and he doesn't agree with that. But I do agree with him, and I don't know if we need to be involved in every single mess that comes up in the Middle East. So how do we resolve this issue? You know, do we just keep jumping into all these little skirmishes that are taking place there, like a civil war in Syria, where either side that wins isn't really a side that we want to be partners with? You know, it's fighting evil versus evil, and we're going to side with the lesser of two evils. I don't think that's our fight, and we shouldn't be there. And why are we doing this? And we're at a point where we're reaching a fiscal crisis that may be irreversible, with the dollar many are arguing on the verge of collapse. And if that's true, and we're on the verge of collapse of the dollar, then why are we going to get involved again with hundreds of billions into trillions of dollars in a war that we have no place in being. And today, Kerry spoke before Congress and was speaking of how in Syria now they verified that it was the government, it was Assad, who released sarin, chemical weapons, gas, on his people. They said there was no proof to show that it was the rebels. And again, that's a horrible thing, killing around 1,600 people using this gas. But 100,000 were killed prior to that, and we didn't step in and do anything then. Are you telling me that because gas was used to kill 1,600, that the 100,000 others that died, it wasn't as meaningful or as tragic or as serious? It absolutely was. So again, I know the issue of using certain type of weaponry, we don't want to send the message to certain countries, Iran being the main, who's working on nukes, that will sit back and let certain weapons of mass destruction be used without any kind of involvement from our country. We don't want that message out there. But at the same time, how do we do it without putting ourselves in bankruptcy, killing more of our young people going there to fight? Because regardless of what they say, it's not going to be limited to just sending missiles, sending drones, and so on. It's going to be involving boots on the ground at some point. And as always, even when our allies say, hey, we're with you, they do it only precursory. They never send the same amount of troops, spend the same amount of money, or do the same that we do. We always carry the weight. So they may send over 100 troops, we send 1,000. They send 1,000, we send 100,000. They send 100,000, we send 1,000,000. So, it's always been that way, and it always will be that way. And the ironic thing about it is we always lead the way, lead the march, bang the drum the loudest. And when the smoke clears from all this, we never really get the accolades. What do we get from helping Iraq? What do we help from doing anything in Libya? What do we get Kuwait? Any of these places? Do we get oil? Do we get things that reduce? I mean, the last time I looked, oil is as high as it's ever been. So, again, folks, think about this thing, what's going on in Syria. I think it's time for us to just try to stay peaceful for a while. We don't always have to be involved in wars. We don't always have to get the economy jump-started through the war machine. I think there's got to be a changing in the thinking in this country, and the big problem and big part of that is we're only listening to two sides of the debate, Republicans and Democrats. What happened to all the other third parties that used to be out there, the Independence Party, Libertarian, there's a Tea Party, now there's a million different things. Listen, you may not agree with the philosophies of all these different third parties or independent parties that are floating out there, but the more different dialogues, the more different points of view, the more different individuals we hear from, the better. Because right now we're just hearing two sides of the same coin. Republicans argue one thing all the time, Democrats argue the one thing all the time, and then ultimately, regardless of who wins, once they're in office, they end up doing the same thing. We're in as many wars, if not more, with Obama than we were with Bush. So what's changed on the war policy? We're spending money the same way and doing the same things as before. Nothing's changed. And that's because these two parties basically always do and promote the same thing. We have to get away from that. With that said, I'd like to go over a recap of what's going on in the news because, again, more troubling stuff. So I'd like to catch up. So if you've been hiding under a rock, you've been missing in action, you got locked in your closet, under the car, and it fell on you, whatever you might be doing, sleeping like Rip Van Winkle for a week, I don't know. I'm going to bring you up to date on the news. And you know what sucks about this? It's just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. When I prep these stories, I look for things that I'm happy to talk about. And you put on the news at night, you go on the internet and look up what's the trending stories. It's all tragedy. It's all sadness. It's all terrible things that happen. I mean, we just had 9/11 celebrations to honor the dead of what happened and one of the worst catastrophes and attacks of all time. And not even within a week or so of that, we have a madman going through, the old Navy Yard and shoots it up and basically kills 13 people. What is the rhyme or reason behind this? And, of course, I'm talking about the case with Aaron Alexis, who basically went in with a Remington shotgun, with no rhyme or reason, no real person that he's looking for, and just basically shot down 13 people dead. No reason. And what's sad about this is we see this happening over and over again. Multiple mass shootings in different states, movie theaters, schools, and there's still this huge debate on guns. Listen, I'm for the Second Amendment. People have a right to carry a gun. But at a certain point, we have to make the ability to get those guns more involved. We have to look into the backgrounds of people, stay into the backgrounds of people, and see, do they have the mental capacity to have these firearms? And at some point, we have to look into the ability of have people carrying weapons that basically could just mass kill. I don't think anybody's going hunting with any of these AK machine guns out there, these instant machine guns that do 30 clips and rounds inside of 10 seconds. There's not many deer or bears you're hunting with those. So I don't really get the argument to that. I'm all in favor of people having guns, but when you get to that level, I think that's where it gets a little nonsensical, and people have to bring a little common sense into it, because we're just getting case after case. And I know the argument, guns don't kill, people do. Yeah, that's true. And you got to have some amount of personal responsibility on people. But at the same time, if we could do things to make a system work better without limiting our rights, we need to do that. And this is a place to start, because just seeing the unnecessary death in such a horrible way of people on a regular basis it's becoming has to end. I also want to talk about two big cases that were in the news, both involving police misconduct. One was two cops that just brutalized a woman during a DUI arrest, and they basically slammed her face into the car onto the ground. It was just horrific. And this was in Tallahassee, another case coming out of Florida again, and they just took this woman and they brutalized. Her name was Christina West. And, people say to me, yeah, she was drunk, she had kids in the car. Who cares? All that's irrelevant. No matter what she's charged with, once the police get involved and they grab this person and they're in custody and there's no threat or danger from this person, to brutalize them. This woman had fractured cheekbones, her eye socket was kind of partially knocked out, where she had to have surgeries. I mean, it's just horrible. And just today in the news again, an officer in Ohio grabbed a man, his wife, and their kid and pulled them out of a car because they asked questions while he stopped a relative of theirs on the street. And again, had them handcuffed face down on the ground, and he's pointing a taser gun at them, screaming at them as if they were some threat to him. And I don't know what it is, if these police officers are just stupid or they're looking for notoriety, they want to get on the news and this is their way of doing it. But knowing that everything is videotaped this day and everything is documented, how can you be doing things like this that are so obviously going to be observed and watched? And why would you want to leave that impression of the job you work for? And what's scary is when you speak to police officers, it's the same old story. Oh, it's a hard job out there. Oh, it's terrible. Go on a drive-by and see what it's like. Listen, no one's going to say being a cop isn't a hard job. We all know that. We all respect it. You take your life in your hands when you go out into the field. But at the same time, it doesn't give you a license to become a breaker of the law and think that you have carte blanche to just do whatever you want. We need to get police officers with better training who are not so fast to react and stay calm. Because what we're getting now is just case after case where police officers for no reason are just doing this on a routine basis, brutalizing people. And what's sad about it is it's the same old story. Every time you read it, you see that the people that were brutalized and had the hell knocked out of them, they're charged with resisting arrest, and they're also charged with assault on an officer. And there was no resisting arrest, and there's no injuries or assault on the officer. But they do this every time to muck up the paperwork to make it seem like that's the only reason that the person got hurt, because when they tried to subdue them to get them under control to arrest them, that they got injured. And it's complete BS. It's false. It's a lie. And they get away with this all the time, and it's very sad because the more they get away with it, it gives them, the impression that they can get away with this and they're above the law. So the police department has to send a message to its own people, you can't do this, and it has to stop. Okay, I got so much more to talk about. The show's going to be switching to an hour in around a week or two, folks, so we have lots of time to talk about more things in the news as well as other topics. But you know what? We got the judge waiting back in the green room, ready to come on. If you saw the Anna Nicole Smith proceeding online, you absolutely know who our next guest is going to be. He's out of the circuit court down here in Florida. He's been a judge for I can't tell you how many countless years. He's originally from New York, I believe out of the Bronx. It's none other than Judge Larry Seidlin. Judge, thanks for joining us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I love listening to your voice, too. Your voice is as different as my voice.
Hey, listen, we're getting as much New York accent as you can in one phone call here today.
I think we should be on The Sopranos. Well, voices should be... We sound like we're Sopranos characters, don't we?
Absolutely. We just need to have the script about where to dump the body and where we're picking up the payoff from tonight.
Exactly.
Now, I know you're from where? Originally the Bronx?
I'm from the Bronx. I went to Columbus High School, and then I went to Hunter College in the Bronx.
Well, Brooklyn, New York over here, and I also went to Hunter College, so we're both alums from the same university.
Well, that's
now,
funny. And the next mayor in New York City is going to be from Brooklyn. Either the Democrat or Republican. They're both from Brooklyn.
It'll probably shake things up. We need to get someone with some Brooklyn blood in there. Now, listen, we have little time. I want to get right to the chase because you presided over one of the most watched proceedings in ages outside of OJ and what we just saw with Zimmerman and so on. And I may want to ask you some questions about those. But how did the case even get to you in Anna Nicole Smith's body? How did that all come about?
Well, it's interesting. What happened was it was a blind computer that spit my name out. It could have been one of 4 judges, and I wound up being selected. I was on my way to a nice Greek lunch with my wife, and my secretary called and says, "We have the Anna Nicole case." I didn't even know who she was. I would have knew who she was if she played for the Brooklyn Nets, but I didn't know.
So now, prior to that, had you ever done any real high-profile cases that were assigned to you?
Yeah, I was on the bench, as you said, for almost 3 decades, and I had some heavy-duty cases. I had some murder cases and this and that, but nothing like this. This case, we had helicopters. We had everything going on. There was a circus outside my courtroom.
People don't understand when you do a high-profile trial. It's like nothing else that people understand because it's paparazzis everywhere trying to get a picture of the participants, get a statement. Everyone trying to one-up everybody that someone else got, some scoop that no one else has. I mean, now as a judge, how do you control all of that?
You just make sure there's order and structure in your courtroom. And what happened was, this case, I had to decide where to bury Anna Nicole's body. I had to also try to find out who the father was of Anna's child, Danny Lynn. And then there was a potential murder case going on. We didn't really know the circumstances of Anna's death. So what I did is I took jurisdiction over everything at that time. I said, I'm going to decide where to place a body and who the father is.
Were you shocked the amount of media coverage that the case got?
Well, as the case was unfolding in front of me, I started to realize the fame that Anna Nicole had, that she was a pop icon, and she was really Marilyn Monroe, too. The public loved her, and she had her own reality show. She was Playmate of the Year. She was married to the billionaire who was in his late 80s. She had a lot of stuff going on. And I realized
she had a tremendous following. She absolutely had a tremendous following, and she was.
Well, I want to tell you something wild. It was something wild. On Tuesday, there was an opera in London called the Anna Nicole. It was an opera right in London.
I was ask you about that.
And then in New York, the opera came to New York this Tuesday night. It was in New York, and you know where it was?
Music.
It was in your hometown, Brooklyn. It was right in Brooklyn. And it's playing right now in Brooklyn. And Brooklyn has come back.
Now, do you know if they have someone playing you in it? Do they cover any of the proceedings?
No, they don't have my case. They don't have my bald head in the play. No, in the opera. No, they stop it at her death. They don't go beyond that.
Because I was reading the review, and I almost thought when they first sent it to me, I said, they really did an opera based on Anna Nicole Smith. I was almost thinking, was I being punked? And this was like someone sending me like the next script from the producers saying, we're going to do a play, or not even a play, we'll do an opera where it's all music, and it's going to be about Anna Nicole Smith. What do you think? Do you want to invest? And it's actually true, and it's been playing, and actually some of the reviews I've seen have been good. I mean, does that shock you that she's the subject of an opera?
Well, it doesn't shock me because, as you know, operas have tragedy, love, fun, and her life was a tragic life because she went after the American dream and just never got there because of all this drug overdose. And she was famous all over the world. And even when we were deciding where to bury her during my trial, that trial was being televised in countries all over the globe.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I will say this. I think in terms of the dream, at the time she died, it was tragic as it was. But let me tell you, in terms of being her age and accomplishing and doing what she did, she lived the dream times 10. So I think a lot of people would be happy just even accomplishing 1/10 of the things that she did with all the different deals that she had and publications she was in, movies and modeling gigs, the whole 9 yards. Now, let me ask you, though, when you covered this case, I know sometime after that, you also did a book on the killing of Anna Nicole Smith. When you put that book together, what was the most shocking revelation that you put in it that people in the general public didn't know from either seeing the trial that was from behind the scenes that from reading the book you would find out?
Well, the book, I spent a few years investigating what took place after my trial, and I realized that her son Danny really died within 2 days of her giving birth to her little girl Danny Lynn, and then I also discovered that Anna Nicole and her son are buried on top of one another in the Bahamas. That they wound up being buried right on top of one another, and I discovered that maybe she shouldn't have been buried in the Bahamas. Maybe Texas really was where she should have been placed, because that's where her family was. I have some regrets whether or not she should have been buried in the Bahamas. If I had the power, now I would have exhumed the son's body that's in the Bahamas, and I would have brought him back with her to the United States.
That was going to be my question. If you can go back in time now with a magic crystal ball, what would you have done differently in the Anna Nicole Smith case if you could do it over?
Oh, it was presented to me that she wanted to remain in the Bahamas, and I don't believe that's the case. I believe that she went to the Bahamas to try to get some peace in her life, gave birth to the baby in the Bahamas, and I believe she wanted to go back to L.A. because the Bahamas is a great place to vacation and visit, but it's not a place that has the electricity and the limelight as L.A. does. And I believe she would have gone back to L.A. and continue with her fame and her fortune. And I would have preferred to have buried her in Texas where her mother is and her other family members are. I would have brought her back to the States with the son. I didn't have jurisdiction over the son. The son was buried in the Bahamas, and I don't really believe he should have been buried there either.
That's interesting, because I know a lot of people had very mixed views on that and where her body should be resting and where that took place. On the same note, we got to really see up close and personal Howard K. Stern, the lawyer who was also involved with her, not involved with her, handled the legal affairs. What did you make of Howard K. Stern, and do you think he was involved in her death, even though we know he went to trial on that? What do you make of all that?
Well, what happened was he came back to my courtroom from the Bahamas to testify, and unfortunately for him, he stated that he was giving her drugs, that he was enabling her. And from his mouth in my courtroom, the California Attorney General in those days was Jerry Brown. Now, of course, he's the governor of California. He indicted her and charged Stern with, I think it was 9 felonies. And he had a trial, Stern, and the jury found him guilty of 2 felonies, and the judge dismissed the charges. It went to the appellate court, and the appellate judges reversed and sent it back to the trial judge and said, here's the 2 felonies back. What are you going to do? And it was a tough trial, but I was able to get the truth out of the people. I was able to get the truth and find what was best at the time. But you don't always have all the facts during a trial, because a trial is a moment in time. And
right,
during
you
that
find it
moment,
out on the fly.
yes.
Well, let me ask you. I got a lot of emails when people knew you were coming on the show, and they were like, I watched the trial, and I always like to ask some hard ones in here, and they were like, listen, I watched the trial, and the judge seems like a good guy, seems funny, but during the trial it seemed like he made too many jokes or got too overly emotional, like there was times when he was crying and seemed very upset, and they were like, is that really this guy? Or was he acting for the cameras in hopes that one day he's going to land a TV gig, maybe like Judge Judy, and break out of being a judge and go into the, to the next realm of his career doing TV? What do you say to ask that question?
It's funny, Diane Sawyer, when I met with her, because I wound up giving her the first interview after the trial, but we sat in her conference room before, and she said, we sent a team down to South Florida to interview lawyers that appeared in front of you in the past, and they said, that's really you. They all said, that's Larry Seidlin, that's Judge Larry. And people that know me, and there were a lot of lawyers that came in front of me over the years, I was always genuine. I was always involved in the case. As you know, in Brooklyn and the Bronx, I left everything on the playing field like you did when you played sports. So
you leave it all out on the field and you give it 100%.
Exactly.
But let me ask you, as a follow-up to that question, do you think that, now it's like these trials get such notoriety, they're everywhere these days. I mean, there's probably 20 different shows on TV that cover these big notorious trials that are going on all the different networks, and you see them from beginning to end now. Do you think there's a problem where the participants are becoming larger than life and almost becoming more important than the subject matter of the actual trial itself, where, now it's like the defense lawyers, who's the judge, and the judge is trying to make better jokes than the defense lawyers, and the defense lawyers are trying to do things that are outrageous so people remember them. And then the smoke clears and everyone's writing a book, everyone's doing a million TV shows or trying to get a gig on a TV show. I mean, Mark O'Mara is going to be an analyst now after Zimmerman on CNN. I mean, do you think that there's a problem with that? Or do you think it's just a natural flow of the course of doing these cases?
Well, does the TV affect the trial? Does it change the dimensions of the trial? And the answer is yes, of course. The lawyers, if they know there's a TV camera on, will be much different than without a TV camera. The court's different, the judge is different, the jury is different. It affects the case. And does it affect it in a bad way? Sometimes it does. The prosecutors sometimes are going to be tougher because they know they're being looked at by the media. It affects the playing field. And I sit, as you know, as a judicial analyst on a bunch of these shows and analyze how I think the case is going to turn out because of the TV cameras.
And I think it does have an overwhelming effect, particularly even jurors, knowing that it's televised. They worry now, if I vote this way or this way, what will be the public outcry? And the other thing is, I won't speak when the jury verdict comes out, because if none of us speak, then maybe we get to do a book as the jury. I mean, everyone's angling now in these things. Just real quick, because we have 90 seconds left, where can people pick up your book, Judge? So if they want to get out and really get the inside scoop on Anna Nicole Smith and what happened, where can they pick that up today?
Well, thanks. It's on Amazon, and it came out in 2010. As you know, I was on the Today Show with it, and then the next day they had me on The View. It was fun. It was fun writing it, and it tells a lot about my life story. But I came on because I enjoyed listening to you. That's why I came on tonight.
Hey, I appreciate you saying that, Judge. Again, we're out of time. We got less than a minute left. I want to thank our guest tonight. Always interesting, always with something good to say. One of my favorite judges out in New York and then Florida. You know him, Judge Larry Seidlin. Thanks for joining us. Pick up the book if you haven't had a chance to read it. If you really want to know the inside scoop on the Anna Nicole Smith case that took place, you're going to get everything you don't know from that book. Okay, everybody, keep the emails coming. Again, this is the Adam Thompson Show. Look us up at www.attorneyadamthompson.com. That's where you'll find our links, our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our YouTube channel with all our videos. Keep the good questions and comments going. We look forward to hearing from all of you. Next week we'll have more guests. And as always, please remember, be part of the conversation and always think outside the box.